Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This Week in Solar. I'm Aaron Nichols, the Research and Policy Specialist here at Exact Solar in Newtown, Pennsylvania. And today we have a very special guest who I've been after for a few months to do the show. And you'd think I'd be able to get him easily because he's within my own organization, but it took some doing. Dave Hammis basically stumbled into the solar world like I did. And Dave, I would love to hear you outline that journey for a little bit before we get started.
Yeah, I'd be glad to, and I hope I don't bore anyone. But yes, I was motivated very early on. Actually, it was after 9/11. I I was curious about that and what caused that whole disaster. And when I started digging into it, I found that a lot of it was driven by, oddly enough, about oil. And
Hmm.
two people agreed on that, Osama bin Laden and George W. Bush. And I thought, wow, I want to dig deep into this. And I was thinking, okay, well, how do you avert such things going forward? And it was such an emotional impact that that had on everyone at the time. But I started paying attention to and studying energy efficiency, renewables, and I just became really intrigued with it. So I was self-taught for a few years early on, ended up going to Solar Energy International, one of the oldest training facilities for solar energy out in Colorado.
Very
And
nice.
went through their program, and people started learning that I knew about solar, and they'd ask me to design a system for them, and I would. And then all of a sudden, they asked me to install it, and I found I was in the solar business. That's how it happened. And then someone else found me, an organization, a big conglomerate out of Germany, that one of their arms of their conglomerate was making solar panels, a premium panel. And they called and they said they were going to launch a facility here in the US. Would I want to join them? So I did. So I was like the second person in the organization in the Americas. And I ended up running that organization for, I guess it was about 5 years or more. And I had a whole
Hmm.
team of salespeople across the country, sales managers, and we grew it from nothing to like $100 million in solar panel sales to all the solar installation companies across the Americas. And I eventually ended up going to work for a software company, one of the earliest ones in the industry that designed software. And one of our big clients was Sun Edison, which was probably the largest installation network at the time, a huge organization. And later I went to work with a company that used solar energy to pump and purify water. And they happened to do business all over the globe. So I was like 1 month with them, and I got the conversation. I was called into the office of the president, and he said, "You're going to Africa." I can do that. He said, "Do you know how to speak French?" And I said, "Ooh la la." That was about it. I wasn't sure how many words that was. So I did that. I started traveling over there, half a dozen trips over there and developing projects in a few of the West African countries, which was quite exciting and eye-opening to say the least.
Mhm.
Eventually, the pandemic hit and I couldn't travel anymore, so I came back here. Uh, I took off for a little while because of the pandemic and I wasn't going anywhere, but later joined up with Exact Solar, which happened to be one of the customers of mine when we were selling solar panels for the German manufacturer. So that's it in a nutshell and how I got
Man,
here. Uh,
man.
and gravitating towards commercial projects and of the like. And I had a lot of experience with government related projects, especially in Africa, where I was dealing with the highest level of, parliamentary government. And I just felt really comfortable in pursuing that here. So I work with a number of municipalities and work on, developing business in that regard. And the nonprofits is just an area that everyone stays away from, as well as a lot of government types of projects that people don't chase after those because they take longer to develop. They're tougher to develop, tougher to get across the finish line.
Mhm.
And it's not because I enjoyed that so much, but
Yeah.
it is because fewer people do it. And I know, the ins and outs of it a little bit. perhaps more than some do. Just
Yeah.
from experience and failing often enough, you learn a lot. But
Yeah, and I want to touch on something that I think is so important. I mean, I've been really hammering on this on every podcast I've been interviewed on and in the solar industry. I mean, it's so important to me to to highlight the stories of people who didn't follow a linear path. Because I also didn't follow a linear path. I work in solar because I was surfing in a town in Ecuador and I met two circus girls who invited me to sell solar with them door to door.
of course.
And it's so important to me that, like if you're someone who's listening to this and you might be intimidated by the business world or you want to break into clean energy, just start talking to people because like if it seems intimidating from the outside, the reality of the inside is, things are just happening.
That reminds me of an aside I just shared with someone recently, one of our colleagues actually. Um, is when I started developing these projects on my own very early on, it's like a homeowner would find out about it and have me design a system, or a real small business or whatever. And I would do that. And then I was working with a friend of mine because he was intrigued by it and we were doing things together. And he got a hold of a request for proposal from USAID and he shared it with me. And I read this, and here USAID was responsible for trying to put together the nation of Liberia in West Africa after their civil war.
Oh
And it was
wow.
a disaster, and USAID could not get it put together. So they're reaching out for input and so forth. And their RFP was to create an energy solution for the entire country because it was destroyed. All the
Oh my
grid came down,
gosh.
and everything was destroyed through the Civil War. People were taking the wires off off the poles and everything else. So
Yeah.
I thought, well, why not? I've done two homes and a small orchard business, so I'm capable
Why
of
not
this.
the entire country of Liberia?
Exactly. So I so I took it on and I met this gentleman, like you're saying, just in a conversation, who actually escaped the Civil War, came over here to live with his daughter, and he happened to be in charge of the entire cellular infrastructure for the country. And he knew every square inch of the country, the terrain and everything. So he and I worked together and I created this plan. He knew which industries were the strongest over there and what the biggest problems were with there's like 85% unemployment
Yeah.
and just a disaster. So the crime rate was so high, everyone was trying to survive. So whatever, I put together this plan and submitted it at the last minute to USAID. I did not win the bid for it, but I found out about, maybe 4 or 6 months later that the energy company that had been in place over there was already awarded it before the RFP came out. So it was just like, I don't know what you call it. It's like you had to send out an RFP by law or something.
Right.
Um,
Also,
so
for anyone who's listening who doesn't know industry acronyms, RFP is a request for proposal.
yeah, thank you. I jumped through that. But but then I read their solution and found out that they were burning old rubber trees that weren't producing anymore. That was their clean energy plan for sustainability. And
Wow.
that plus whatever other fuels they had available to them. But they also apparently found 3 or 4 items within my proposal that they borrowed for doing energy along the coast because they could produce wind energy there and use that for freezers and refrigeration of their fishing industry because they had none before that. So their
Yeah.
fishing industry could triple just
Oh,
by that
wow.
information. So it was things like that. But nonetheless, I thought it was an interesting experience, and you learned a lot
Yeah.
of doing business over there and so forth. But
Yeah, and that's so
uh,
cool that you've had that impact and have been able to carry that home and try to bring the same thing back to the US. And I'm curious, as you've worked with some of these nonprofits and municipal organizations, what are some of the major benefits of solar that a lot of these organizations see once they actually get those projects across the finish line?
well, I can speak to like the religious organizations. There's quite a few that I've been working with. I think I have at least a half a dozen so far this year alone, just since it's springtime, and there's more on the horizon. But they have a real tenet, their equivalent of bylaws in their organizations call for environmental stewardship
Hmm.
and giving back to the earth, and for all the right reasons. They want to do clean energy projects. You can ask just about any organization of that type if they would like to go solar, and the answer is yes. Historically, they've been prevented from doing so because of, it's cost prohibitive for the initial outlay of cash. That makes one of the biggest hurdles. So now we have some solutions, and especially with Exact Solar working on some very unique solutions that can overcome those hurdles. And it certainly helps with um, the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going by the wayside more or less now with our current administration. But that enabled these people, these communities to go solar in their places of worship and save tons of money.
Hmm.
So, they benefit significantly from the financial side as well as doing what's right at the same
Right.
time, for their community, for safety, for resilience. All those things are,
Yeah.
boxes that they need to check. So
So they have to justify upfront cost, but generally see quite a bit of savings on the back end.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And then so other than cost, like when you're speaking to the boards of these organizations, what else are they usually concerned about and what other worries do you have to alleviate?
Well, with a religious organization, they have multiple tiers. You have perhaps a small committee that embraces and wants to champion the efforts to go with clean energy. And And then if they are successful and collaborate and speak to people like myself, they can take it to the next step, which may be a bigger committee, and eventually to the church council, and then that goes on to the congregation. And everyone has to have the majority buy-in in order to make anything happen. Plus, they need some way of funding the project, whether it's fundraising or they have the capital or depending on us to have a solution, which fortunately we're able to do.
Right. And what after they've gone solar, what do you mainly hear from these organizations when you're checking back in with people?
Oh boy. Well, they're certainly pleased that they did it. I think the way that it's vindicated, if nothing else, is the fact that one house of worship will share that experience with another. And then I get a call from them. And that's how I got up to six or seven so far, this year is by that exact thing happening. Someone may call in and I'll pursue it and they'll tell, their friends in another congregation and it just, word of mouth. So that definitely takes place.
Yeah. So generally they're excited.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think this is one of the obstacles of solar I've been joking about a lot of people with is that it's too good at what it does. It's kind of boring. It just sits there and makes power. And once it's turned on, you forget it's there because it's so good at what it's doing.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'd like to touch on that a little bit because technically, solar, as we know it, and what we think about when you use that term, and for better or worse, it does not generate any electricity whatsoever.
Hmm.
All the energy is the sun, and the sun's energy is used in every way you can think. Every single living thing on the planet, all of our
Hmm.
food, everything, heat, light, you name it, it comes from the sun. And
Right.
um, it comes to allow us, because of technology, to power the things that we want to power. And there are some people now that don't want that to happen. They do not want some people to have access to the sun. And to me, I don't understand it. It's ridiculous. It's free energy.
Mm.
It's fuel. And yeah, there's a cost for the hunks of metal and glass that we put on top of a building to channel that energy so that it runs a motor or your refrigerator or your internet or your TV or all the above. But for those who want to stop the sunshine from being able to give us the living styles that we have, that's just unbelievable. I don't know that thought process. And the
Hmm.
alternative um, makes it even worse. So I was joking with somebody recently. I borrowed a line from a big long-term advocacy group, the Third Act. Um, if you go in and have a conversation with one of these organizations, you could have a checklist such as two boxes. You can get your energy from heaven, or you can get your energy from
From
where would you like
below.
to get your energy? And and the one
Yeah,
from heaven has the least cost, is the fastest to put in place, and the longest term of any. And it's the healthiest, safest, but let's not do that. Some people don't want to do that. They
right.
prefer.
Yeah, I mean, well, there's an entire infrastructure built around just digging things up and burning them and then going to find more things to dig up and burn.
Yeah, right. That's true. Yeah. I mean, it creates poisonous water and, poisonous air and everything else. I
Right.
mean, if you look at the stats that the government supplies us with, the stats on how many people die in the US each year from particulate matter from burning fossil fuel or from poisonous water. And it's
Right.
incredible. It's like a small city every year,
It is.
it,
Yeah.
and uh,
Yeah, and this is
numbering.
this is one thing that I'm very fired up about because I'm a very contrarian person, and so just whoever's in power, I disagree with generally. But I'm very excited at the idea that harvesting the sun's rays is now an act of revolution. That just gets me fired up because I love the idea that this thing that just shines on the earth all day and all that energy, and we found a new way to use it, and it's even better and more efficient than any way we've generated the electricity we need before, and now they don't want us to use it.
Right. Yeah, it's cutting off the sun. I mean, talk about the ultimate, you know, power. How do you do that? It's like, oh, that'd be pretty neat if I can control the sun. Why didn't I think of that?
Yeah, oh, it's crazy.
And
Well,
it's, it's you
one of
know,
the projects I've been most excited about since I've worked here at Exact Solar is our Habitat for Humanity project.
yeah.
And I'm interested to hear you talk about maybe challenges we faced there, how we overcame them, the benefits of that project, how that's going to impact the people in those homes. I would love to hear you speak on it.
Yeah, sure. That is one of my favorite projects, if you will. Uh, so the gentleman from Habitat for Humanity from the Philly division saw one of our highway billboards and started tracking us down and ended up going through Solarize to get to us. And I certainly looked at their project. They had 5 new homes that they were providing for some families in need, and they were building these super efficient homes, and solar was going to top it off, which made a whole lot of sense. So they're in the city, and there were certain restrictions there and certain guidelines we had to follow. But we, designed the system. We designed the components, the equipment itself had to be special equipment for the project in order um, to abide by, the restrictions that the city has or the guidelines that they have. And we did so. We adjusted the systems appropriately, and we launched it and had a nice little press release come out there, a press event at the location. And in doing the math for that presentation, found out that by doing so, they were saving those people over $40,000 in energy costs simply by putting these solar arrays on their homes for people that, couldn't afford that or the homes otherwise. But
Right.
now it just lowered their cost to live there, and they'll end up as homeowners and solar system owners, in the not too distant future. So that's a
Yeah.
very rewarding success story. So
Yeah.
kudos to Habitat for sure, and that ongoing effort that's quite noble, I believe.
And that's one of the things I love most about those kind of stories, especially when you talk about schools, houses of worship, or organizations like Habitat for Humanity, is you have people who are wasting money on ever increasing electricity prices. And nonprofits have very strict budgets. And when you can help them free up more money, that goes towards doing more good in the community.
That's the intent. Yes, that's true. Um, yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
That's part of the conversations that we have. One of the clients is a Ukrainian church, and I brought an idea to the table that the money that they would save from going solar, that could be put into a fund that could be contributed to their homeland,
Mhm.
and they love that idea. So
Yeah.
there are things that they'd rather do with their money than spend it on energy. As you said, Aaron, that the prices keep going up and up on fossil fuels, and that doesn't have to be the case. Yeah, so it's good to see those success stories for sure.
So, what advice do you have for any tax exempt organizations that are thinking about solar now? What do they need to do?
They need to act immediately.
Right.
The winds change weekly. I mean, 2 weeks ago, um, you know, we're that close to a new executive order that's going to change the world again, in this world. And the people that want to wait and see are the ones that are going to lose out. And the people that take action now are the ones that are going to be like saying, wow, I can breathe,
Right.
in a lot of these organizations, the the energy, it represents over a third of their expenses. That's huge. You know,
Hmm.
that's a big percentage. And if you're paying 35% of whatever, you're passing the basket a few times now just to
Hmm.
raise your energy bill every month. And
Hmm.
it's not an endless supply of money to keep these organizations running.
Right. And when we talk about organizations like Habitat for Humanity, you're also talking about families that are on very limited budgets who then now have just a little bit more money to get through the end of the month and aren't, choosing between electricity and food.
That's true.
The news article that's coming out this Friday, I mean, this is probably going to come out in a month, but the one I wrote that's coming out this Friday is a deep dive on the cancellation of solar for all and a couple stories like the New York Times talking about this woman in Georgia who was paying $500 a month. She's a single mom of three. She works two jobs just to support herself, and Solar for All was supposed to give them a solar energy system and take that cost off the table. And that just got yanked out from under them.
Yeah, again, it's one of those things. It's difficult for me to process the mentality behind that because I know there's been a lot of things in the news about how devastating the changes to these incentives have been for our industry.
Mhm.
And, there's like hundreds of thousands of people in this industry and losing jobs and companies going out of business and so forth. And I think beyond that, I mean, that is a bad thing. There's no question about it. And part of that industry. But I know from our experience in the last 3 years and up until a week ago that for every dollar someone spends, they're going to get two, $3, or $4 back from going solar in savings or in incentives in some cases. But um, that the bill, the IRA law had $369 billion assigned to energy, dedicated to energy. And I don't know how much, it's hard to find out how much has been gone through, but
Mhm.
if it was only half of that, I think it's a lot more, but if it was only half of that, that represents like $500 billion dollars that
Right,
are back to those people. They're coming
right.
back to the American people, the public. Forget about the solar, industry employees or whatever. Not that we want to, but I'm just saying, put that aside for a moment and look at where the real devastation is. You just took a half $1 trillion away from the American people with that one move, and
Right.
it keeps on happening. So I don't understand that mentality or the
Yeah.
people that are behind it because they're hurting themselves, and it doesn't.
Yeah. And I do think the one thing the solar industry is very bad at, and this is something that I go back and forth with my friends who work with other companies all the time, is just we're not good at relating the human impact of things like this. It's a very technical minded industry of people who love numbers and graphs.
Yeah.
But when you zoom in on the story of a single mother of three who could have freed up a third of her monthly costs and, just gotten some nicer things and felt a little more dignity and then had that sense of hope pulled away from her.
Yeah, I can't
That's the
imagine
kind of
what that
stuff that I
is.
think it's important we focus on.
Yeah, you're right. And there's, the argument of climate change. I feel in a similar fashion, you're going to argue with somebody that disagrees with you all day long for years, and it's been going on for decades,
Mhm.
arguing about is it climate change from what we do or not, blah, blah. Well, put that aside and look at what you just mentioned and what I just mentioned a second ago. If you invest in clean energy because it's such a low cost, at worst, even without any incentive whatsoever, you're going to cut your bill in half. And
Yeah,
if and all the things that come with that in cleaning up the community and for these schools that go solar, schools, places of worship, they are community centers in a disaster, in a flood or whatever the event may be, a bad storm or what have you. And that makes it much more resilient.
Mhm.
And it also separates from centralized energy and having one big generation plant somewhere into distributed energy, which removes the possibility of as many cyber attacks and things like that. If you can separate yourself from the grid, the grid gets
Right.
hacked 50 times a day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
you
And
know,
yeah, it's been very sad to watch the administration try to tie clean energy to identity politics and use
yeah,
that and try to tell people that clean energy is just some sort of lefty commie thing. It's not. It's here. It's gonna be the future. In 20
yeah.
years, this is a minor setback, but in 20, 30 years, I mean, these kind of conversations are gonna seem silly.
Yeah, but yeah, I know my children, my grandchildren, and beyond. I mean, they cannot imagine what a group of people are doing to their future. It's
Hmm.
just, they can't comprehend why somebody would knowingly and deliberately do that so that they're going to have to pay for it in
Right.
terms of health and price and everything else.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't fathom that. And
Well, that I
so,
think is that's a really good place to ask my last question, which I ask everyone who comes on the show.
all right.
And I wrote this because I went to my grandma's birthday party a few months ago. She was turning 80 years old. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking about like the timeline of clean energy and how she was born into a world that had just been electrified. The Rural Electrification Act had happened 10 years before she was born. She was born in rural Missouri. The first PV cell was 1954, so she was 9. And then Jimmy Carter put white panels on the White House in 79, and then everything that's happened since the turn of the century with, PV being at this ridiculously high cost per watt, going all the way down to where it is now and being so economically viable, all of that has happened within her lifetime, coming from a world where what we conceive of as clean energy didn't even exist. And so, if you just want to spitball just for fun, what do you think clean energy looks like in 80 years? And don't worry, we'll both be dead. No one's going to hold us to the answer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is true about dead. But let's see. How do I answer that? I would say a few things. One is when I first started this, I gave you a brief background and my intrigue with the industry and the whole topic. I voiced the fact that I wanted to live to the point where fossil fuel would be the alternative energy.
Mm,
clean renewable energy, wind, solar, whatever, were considered alternative energies and called that, back in the day, they still are. But I wanted to get to a point where they would supersede, the fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are second in place or beyond. And that is actually happened to everyone that's gone solar. So,
Right.
I have natural gas backup, but I don't use it. I have solar on my house. I have heat
Yeah.
pumps, heating things and whatever. So, um, and I have an electric car. So,
Nice.
so yeah. So, where will we be in 80 years? I don't think the technologies that'll be existent then, can even be imagined today
Mm.
because there's this exponential development and growth and what have you. There will be so many technologies that I can't imagine right today that will come and go.
Mm.
And, who knows in 80 years what that's going to look like. I think, one is, um, there's going to be some intelligence put behind building materials that doesn't exist today and
Mm.
the source of those building materials. And they're going to be much more efficient and much more efficient ways of building things. And therefore, a lot more efficiency in keeping them running as far as electricity is concerned. So you'll have two things working in the same direction, just more intelligent products and building practices and less need for that energy. And I mean, short term, there's great promise in solid ox, these cells, these solid oxide fuel cells, and these mini reactors that are in the news these days. And a mini reactor, I love the concept. I just don't think in my backyard they're going to be. They're not pet friendly yet. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
those, I think, those types of things may come and go, but the advancement is going to be, there's going to be a constant need for energy. So there's going to be a constant need to improve the technologies, the ideas, and where that comes from. And I think solar is playing a big part. It will be a big part. I heard something that Ron said when you were speaking with him that it's not going to be in the same form it is now, and I agree with that. There would be a whole lot of different approaches to solar energy that won't be the same as what we're doing right now. But it certainly is going to make up a significant part of our overall energy
Yeah.
supply, and the rest of the world sees that.
Yeah.
Places like China that has passed us by and
Right.
exceed, where we are in advanced technology. It's interesting, but
Yeah.
yeah, it'll play a big
Well,
role.
I'm certainly excited to toss little uranium pellets into my backyard reactor. That's gonna be a fun day when that gets here.
Your new pellet stove.
Well, thanks so much for coming on, Dave. For everyone
Yes.
listening, that's been This Week in Solar, and yeah, talk.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much.